Topping Talks.
Let's
105 hours a week can't be beat. Welcome to Topping Talks. Topping Talks is a Topping Tribune production, and today's episode is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies and ExpressVPN. Topping Talks is also on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and all your favorite platforms. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder released twice a day. Guys, he's quite handsome and brilliant. Well, he's me. That's the joke, you see. If you're an IT leader or a business owner, you can reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also, are you part of the 3.6% of Americans who still care about their privacy? If you are, the perfect ExpressVPN could assist. Even though 96% of stats are made up on the spot, ExpressVPN does give a 100% guarantee via the 30-day back money guarantee. Now, without further ado, I'm proud to say today I'm interviewing Blake Hill, who is the Senior Director of Quality Assurance and Agile Delivery at Accent Care. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So winding back the clock a couple of years, how did you first get into IT?
Oh, well, I started at a company many moons ago called Micrographics. They're no longer in existence, but back in the day, they were like one of the premier software graphics illustration companies that ran on Windows, the early versions of Windows. And I started off in the manufacturing side over on the assembly line back when software was shrink wrapped and packaged and had stickers and got sent to places to sell on shelves.
This is in America?
Yeah, it seems like quite a long time ago.
I was going to say.
So pre-Y2K. And so did that and, was able to parlay that into several different positions over on the operations side of the house and caught the eye of somebody in the quality assurance department over in the other building where the technical people were.
How do you catch their eye?
He would come over a lot to, his name was Joe Reynolds. He's still around here in the IT space today. He's like a VP guru of quality assurance. And, for whatever, we befriended me, and he said, hey, we have some positions open in quality assurance. Would you be interested? And I said, absolutely. I have no idea what you're talking about. And he said, that's okay. We'll teach you. So I made the jump and worked for that company for like 6.5 years. The final 2 years were in IT. Mm-hmm. And I had some great mentors, Tim Allendorf, Carla Bonner, people that showed me the ropes on what to do and how to do it. And the rest is history. I ended up just kind of falling. It kind of naturally fit with my personality. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty much a type A list maker, check things off, and quality kind of just falls right into my wheelhouse as far as my personality is concerned. So made a career of it. Never planned on it, but that's what happened. So.
Now, what is it for the folks who are not IT proficients, or how would you explain to my parents at home?
For what quality assurance is? Yeah. Quality assurance is really making sure the software that you're testing is working per the specifications you've been given, per the requirements. The business has a list of requirements. You have to, developers go and they make the software do those requirements, and the testing team makes sure that all those requirements are actually in the software and the software is functioning the way it should. So.
A lot of people don't realize how many businesses actually create their own software. It's not just, every business by default, kind of cliche, you buy Microsoft.
Right.
Like that's kind of what the average person thinks of, oh yeah, Microsoft, you got software. But a lot of companies that aren't quote unquote IT companies, although I would joke every company is an IT company, they just don't know it yet.
Absolutely.
They're making their own software in-house.
Absolutely. And the company I work for, Accent Care, which is in the home health care and hospice space, we make software that is used internally. We're not using it to sell to anyone like that, but we have an internal team basically that creates software that's used by clinicians and nurses that are used within our company. So they're an IT company. A lot of what we do that facilitates taking care of people in home health care and hospice is run on an IT platform that we have to provide, right? I mean, just not just the software itself, but the whole infrastructure that sits on. So
it's a great competitive advantage too.
Yeah,
because that's something you're creating. You're baking that in house. That's something
you're saving money. Yeah.
Oh, that too.
Right. You can save money, and then you obviously have like ownership of what you want to do. You don't have to ask anybody's permission to make changes to the software or whatever, or be dependent on someone else. We don't run on our own platform like it's in the cloud with another company, but. Yeah, other than that, the software, we get to make all the decisions on that. So, and it's not just one software. I mean, we have all kinds of stuff, data engineering things, analytics, regular software that has a GUI, all that good stuff. So,
what software in particular were you most proud of or had the biggest tremendous impact on the company and the teams?
I can say the one I've been a part of is we have an internal application. It's a referral management application called CareFlow. Mm-hmm. And the one that I've been most closely associated with is what I'm going to share. And yeah, that team is a fantastic team. I've been working with that team for like 3 years. And the team that I work with is just made, we're an Agile team made up of, developers, BAs, QA, system administrators, et cetera. And we have some onshore components and some offshore components. We just have an excellent team. We run by metrics. The team has become self-managed over 3 years. The metrics that the team has been able to put together in a 3-year time span is nothing short of spectacular, and all the credit goes to the team. We had some measurements in place that we started when we baselined as a team. They weren't good.
What was it like when you first joined the company?
When I first joined the company, specifically with that product, I joined at a time where the product team probably wasn't really happy with what was being delivered from a quality perspective and probably from a velocity perspective. Spent a lot of time talking to the important people on the other side of the house and then telling us what they weren't happy with, basically. So we decided that we were going to take some measurements and establish some baselines on how good or how bad we were, either one. Be transparent and basically show them that we cared and wanted to provide them feedback. And we did that. And so we implemented NPS scores that we would send out to our internal customers, asking them how well are we doing, and do that monthly. And then we committed to sharing that score on a monthly basis, whether it was good or bad, to make ourselves accountable to them and to show them that we cared.
And what does the NPS stand for the folks out there?
It's like a net promoter score. So basically you're asking someone to rate you on, are you happy? Are you neutral, or are you unhappy? Yeah. And the only way you get a move to a positive is they give you a 9 or a 10.
Oh, really?
If they're a 6, 7, or an 8, they're a 7 or an 8, they're neutral. They don't really have an opinion. Any score of 6 or less takes your number negative.
Really?
Yeah, and the scale runs from -100 to 100.
Oh, jeez.
So the first time we sent out our NPS score, I think it was if I recall correctly, it was a -37.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So, the team was a little probably dismayed at the score at first. But like I told them at the time, I said, what the great thing is here is that, you have a chance to make some history here. You know what I mean? You can be part of the solution that takes that negative somewhere positive. They did you a favor by telling you that you were -37. Because at that point, whether you're a -37 or whether you're a -90, it doesn't really matter. You have a lot of ground to make up and a lot of things to do. So here's what we're going to do to implement some things to gain the customer's trust back and show them that we care. And we're going to move that score. And I'll just wrap it up by saying this past month was 25 consecutive months of scores above the world-class marker, which is 70.
Really? 25 months?
25 consecutive months. After we initially were at -37, they turned it around in about 5 or 6 months to be positive in the positive scores. And ever since then, anything over 70 is considered world-class.
Yeah.
And last year, they averaged a score of 70 for the entire 2023. And so far in 2024, the average score is 100.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
So that's the team.
That's
the team's credit.
That's a great team built out.
It's a great team.
So what was the first thing they did and you guys did to kind of turn things around? Because I know, a lot of things, the first couple of things will be a big impact. Then you just kind of more like tuning a car where you get a little bit better, a little bit better. What was the first big thing that really helped move the needle in the right direction, so to say?
I think they bought into, what was presented to them as to let's try doing some things maybe differently than have been done before. And I think with anything, if you're going to have a change, it has to be communicated. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? How is this going to benefit you? And how is it going to benefit the organization? How is this going to benefit our relationship with the product team? So I think that getting their buy-in coupled with the fact that we had to show our customer that we cared. And as soon as we did that and made ourselves accountable and transparent, which I think is key to almost any relationship in any business or any kind of management, I'll talk about that more, I'm sure, as we go along. They really recognized that we actually cared then. And then when you make yourself accountable, now you've got skin in the game, right? It's not something you're going to hide behind. We're going to communicate this score loudly and proudly, whether we kill it or whether we get killed.
Yeah.
And The team ultimately became self-managed because that's the goal of every agile team is that they get self-managed, you know, and they run. So I would say those were the two big things that had to happen. They had to really buy in, but we had to communicate. And so I think that's really the big deal. Proactive communication to the product team that we cared.
Yeah.
And I think that helped change relationships.
What was the most compelling thing you did to have people buy in? Because that in and of itself, I mean, there are entire library books written about that. I mean, how were you able to get them to buy into the idea and help really get them excited to turn things around?
I think I'd have to ask them to answer that question. But if I had to guess, I think it's just being authentic. I know that sounds ridiculous, but seriously, especially in the business environment, if you're authentic with what you're selling someone and you really believe and have passion about what you're talking about, I think that's kind of contagious.
I agree.
And so if you're just honest with people and just say, you know, and they feel that you're setting them up to succeed, not setting them up to fail. So they're not having to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, but you're setting them up to be successful out of the gate. And then you have to like mimic and show the behaviors and live the behaviors that you're saying that you're going to live by. If we're going to commit to these things, and this is how we're going to commit to work with one another.
Yeah.
We establish team values on what we agreed. You know, we're going to have safe, transparent, honest, open communication. We're not judging people. We're succeeding as a team, failing as a team. Everybody had to buy in by it. But when you sell that to someone, you know how when you meet someone, you know, after about 5 or 10 minutes, you've probably made a judgment call on if you think they're authentic or are they a salesperson or do they believe what they're saying? And I think it's important for management to, you don't want to sell anything. You just want to be real with people. And I think if you're real with people, they respect that. You know what I mean? So I think they would have to answer that question. I would say that is probably part of the answer. I don't know what the whole answer is there, but to their credit, they bought in. And then they took the ball and ran with it.
Yeah, being authentic and transparent is probably the number one thing I look for in business partners and life, and kind of like the cliche thing in cybersecurity. If someone says that their product can fix everything or it's 100% secure, they're full of crap.
Right.
Because nothing on this planet is, especially with cybersecurity technology, nothing's perfect.
Absolutely.
It's like there's no wise man Thomas Sowell once said there's no such thing as solutions, only trade-offs.
Right.
Because there's always trade-offs.
And I think that is another thing that was sold to them. You just reminded me of something is that, you know, we made it very clear that you have the freedom to fail. We're not here to keep track. We're not here to keep track. I don't care if we make a mistake. We're not worried about whose problem it is. Oh, development did this, the BAs did this, QA did this. No. We succeed or fail as a team. We don't place blame on anything. You have the freedom to fail. I think when I talk to people, like if I interview someone, I always tell them, if you're going to join my team, I just want you to know you have the freedom to fail. And in fact, I hope you fail gloriously, at least once. That's what I tell them, fail gloriously. And what I mean by that is make a mistake big enough that we can all learn from it. Because realistically, that's how you learn. You don't learn by reading. You might learn some things by reading. You might learn some things by watching. But you're going to learn the most by doing and by failing.
Agree.
That's how you learn. And it's unrealistic. I think sometimes management has unrealistic expectations for development organizations. They're not perfect. No. And, you know, it's like the old saying, you don't want to see how the sausage is made. They just want to see the sausage. It's not beautiful behind the scenes sometimes. But people have to know it's okay to fail because that's how people learn. And it's just like when you fail, how do you respond to that? I mean, it's just different. If you take that failure and you say, how do we get better? That's it. That's all you can ask for. And teams, you know, they failed in the beginning a couple times, obviously. And then there was one point at that team when they took their score really up, we dropped off a cliff.
And plateau?
Yeah, well, we didn't just plateau, we dropped.
And really?
We hit a drop. We had a release that got away from us. It didn't have the quality in it that we would expect, you know, from our releases. And the business came back and graded us accordingly. And they were like, you missed the mark. And I was like, yeah, we did. And then immediately from that point on, it was like, and then boom, they took off. So, you know, even when you think you've got it going, you might still, you know, we could have a release next month and maybe it isn't a great release, but you know what? So what can we do to fix it? That's how, you know, it's not worried about whose fault is it. And, you know, we need to go do a research on what the root cause analysis is. Let's do an RCA. Okay, we could waste our time doing an RCA, or we can just quickly talk about it and figure out what are we going to do to fix it going forward and not waste a bunch of time.
Not to get too philosophical, but what are your thoughts? A wise man once said you learn more from your failures than you do your victories. Do you think that's pretty accurate?
I think it's absolutely accurate. I don't know what you learn from winning other than you continue to, you continue, you know what it feels like to win, and it makes you want to continue winning.
True.
But you do learn from your failures. And in fact, not every failure is the same. So you're going to learn a different thing with each failure that's different, right? If all failures were the same, you would fail once and then never fail again. But
Exactly.
there's so many different ways to fail that, you're going to learn immensely more, I think, from. Unfortunately, but I think that's realistic. I mean,
I agree.
You look at someone like Thomas Edison or whoever, and or Tesla, how many times did they fail before they actually were right on something?
Was it like 10,000 times to get the light bulb to be
who
successful?
knows? Yeah,
absolutely. Some metric like that.
Absolutely. So so you expect failure, and I think that's a whole concept of Agile, as you know, is probably you fail fast.
Exactly.
It's not a question of when you're going to fail or if you're going to fail. It's there will be failure, so let's just try to do whatever we can to shift it left and fail here instead of over here.
Exactly.
So that's it. So you just try to fail as fast as you can. You know what I mean, and then get it out of the way.
Exactly.
So yeah.
What's the most, if you don't mind me asking, what was the biggest failure that really stood out to you and it had a big impact on maybe how you change your methodologies, your processes, your thought patterns? Does anything come to mind in that regard?
I don't know what the biggest failure. I mean, I could probably write a book on all of my failures.
Right.
The biggest failure that I've ever been a part of in software, I could give you an example there.
Oh, yeah.
We were on a test team. I'll leave the company anonymous, but there was a testing that we had that I was a part of, and this is back in the day when you would install software on a computer instead of just download it.
Oh yeah.
And we had an application that shipped with a bomb in it. The live version of the product shipped with a 30-day trial code in it. So even though someone paid retail for it and took it home and installed it, after 30 days it shut off.
Oh no.
And so what happened was PC Magazine did a review of our application.
Oh shit.
And I think the title was, and it was the name of the software, and it says "Good while it lasts." And they found our defect. They found that they shipped it, and it was in the magazine there. And that was back in the day. Well, when that happened, you couldn't just put a new executable up on a website and have people download it. You had to pull all your product off the shelf.
You'd make new physical products.
Make new physical discs, etc., and reship it back out to retailers. So I was on that team, right?
Yeah.
We collectively missed it. It wasn't anyone's specific fault, but we missed that. And so, because there was obviously a trial version that people could install for 30 days and then it would go dormant, right?
Yeah.
But so we shipped a live product version with the bomb in it. And PC Magazine was there to tell us that we missed it. And that's really never what you want. So.
No, although another kind of cliche, but it is true. You also learn more about someone or a business when things don't go right than when they do go right. Because it's easy to all be smiles and everyone's happy when things are right, but when something goes wrong and breaks, that's when character's tested too.
Oh, that's when you find out about your team and yourself.
Yeah.
And that's when you find out about your management. And that's when you find out about everybody, because everybody's true colors show up when things don't go right. It's easy to manage when things are going great, when teams are hitting 25 consecutive months of scores.
Yeah.
That's easy, and it doesn't really show your true character. Your true character is, how do you handle adversity? How do you handle failure? How do you handle it when you miss the mark? Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more on that. Absolutely.
And do you have an example of that kind of stands out the most in your career that kind of comes to mind?
I don't know of any off the top of my head that I could give you that quickly. I think that one.
That's a big one.
That one that I just gave you, that example, I don't remember anybody at that company getting chastised.
Really?
I don't remember anybody getting called on the carpet. I don't remember getting berated by management. I don't remember anything.
That's pretty good.
I really don't. I don't remember anything like that. It was a great company. It had a great culture. It had a very strong culture at that
rare.
company. Yeah, it is rare. And that was probably one of the best companies I've ever worked for as far as culture goes. It's a shame they're not still around, actually.
It kind of goes to one of my ADHD questions. How did you first build culture on your team when you first joined the company? And what's your favorite methodologies for kind of like team building activities? And because I know one of the biggest struggles when the pandemic hit was, how do you maintain a company culture when it's mostly virtual? In some cases, 100% virtual, and you have your team sometimes throughout the globe.
Right. That's a great question. And that is something I'm super passionate about. The team that I have, like I said, is local, but they're mostly local, but we're all remote. And then I have a team that I work with that is offshore. So I think there's a couple things that you can do. So these are just my opinions, my experiences. I think if you want to establish a culture, you have to be, we're back to the word transparent.
Oh, yeah.
as a manager, anybody who, I hate that word manager, as a leader, you have to show the behavior, and it's up to you to establish that culture. It's not grown bottom up, it's top down. And however you act, whatever you say, that's what the team's going to adopt. So I think it's important that right out of the gate, if there are any expectations that need to be set, they need to be set right then and there. It's hard to bring the Mustangs in from pasture when you've let them run out and try to go get them and bring them back into the corral. But if you talk to people and say, here are the expectations, here's what we're about, here's what we're going to be about, you have to model that behavior. If you don't model that behavior, you don't have any credibility.
True.
I think the other thing is that they need to know that you're there for them. And it's like I tell my team all the time, you don't work for me, I work for you. Yep. And I'm here to help you make your job easier. I'm here to help facilitate you advancing your career, hopefully, and making you better if I can, whatever that means, whether it's through training or, mentorship, whatever. But if you want to establish a culture, you have to get buy-in from the team. They have to believe you're authentic. They have to believe you're real, and you need to show them that you're real. And that means sometimes you've got to reveal a little bit about who you are. I can give you a great example of that just happened the other day. We have a new CEO at our company, and in her very first meeting, she did exactly this. She basically talked to the company, and in doing so, she revealed some personal things about her family and about, that she didn't have to share, right? She didn't have to share any of that. A lot of times people are nameless. You don't know anything about them. They're just a title.
Exactly.
You don't know anything about that. But when she did that, she became human to the people that she's leading. And if you don't come off as human, if you don't come off as caring about people, you're not going to ever have a culture of any kind. You have to... someone said before me, it's not my saying, but you have to make a deposit in people before you can make a withdrawal. You can't show up and just start asking teams to deliver if they don't feel like you're in the hunt with them, if you're in the fight with them, and they don't know anything about you, and you haven't done anything that would actually give you the opportunity to make a withdrawal if you needed to. You've got to treat them, I don't want to say treat people like a bank, but you get the concept. You really do need to understand people. So one of the other things to establish culture, one-on-ones are imperative. I have one-on-ones with my team, but they're not like you would think. Like, I let them put them on my calendar. They control the one-on-ones. If they decide they don't want to meet that week, we don't meet. But if they want to meet, we're there. Sometimes we don't even talk about business.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about what's going on in their lives, like, hey, how's your son? Your son was sick last week. Hey, how was that trip that you had to India? Was it great seeing your family? What did you do? You're building a relationship. And if you really want to change culture, you've got to have relationships.
That's exceptionally good to have it on a weekly basis, because I know some companies will have it on a quarterly basis, or it's like, at which point does it really matter if it's once a quarter? To me, that's nothing, relatively speaking.
The other thing we did is to establish culture there in IT, in our IT group. So I have a group in IT, but we have a bigger group of IT. Is we started putting out like an ENPS score. So this is where we're putting out to employees, and we're saying, hey, how connected do you feel to the IT group in general, and to management and IT? How are you feeling? Yeah. And we started that. And when we started that, our first score there was a -28.
Oh, wow.
And last week we did one, and it's been a little over a year, and we had a 29, positive 29.
That's incredible.
So we've shifted it because I think they're starting to get the idea. We really care. We're getting feedback from them. We're implementing the feedback. We're getting surveys. We're putting the scores out there when they rate us. Immediately, here's what you rated us. Yeah. When you're transparent with people like that, they feel like you care. We could take the scores and not share it, which might be done at some places.
Oh, some places absolutely.
Right. So what was the point in it, right?
Exactly.
So I don't think anyone thinks you care about meaningful change if you're not willing to share if you're doing well or doing poorly. And so then what can we do? And to my company's credit and to my direct leadership's credit, they take this very seriously. They know it's something I'm passionate about. They've empowered me to run with this and try to work on these things and come up with ideas and have an employee engagement team. When that doesn't really fit in my title, but it's something I get to do, at my company, and something that I'm in charge of for the 133 people we have in IT. Yeah. And I love it. I want people to look forward to coming to work in the morning and not dread work, and feel like if they have meaningful feedback, they can give it to us and that we care about it and we'll action on it. So. It's a long answer to your question. I
Well,
could
no,
talk about that alone probably for like an hour.
No, it's one of the most complex
So,
questions and most important things in business and life is how do you build those relationships and cultivate a good culture. A lot of people think it just means going to Topgolf once a month or something like
right.
that, where it's like,
Exactly.
I mean, events can help certainly,
They
but
do.
it really is about the connections and the time and getting those buy-ins and those deposits.
Yep. When we tracked our NPS score, I keep track, when we do it on an IT basis, I keep track of anything that I think moved the needle on why our score went up or down. We just did this last week, in fact. And I was able to find the correlation. When we do events,
Yeah.
to your point, off-site volunteering, which we've done several times in the past year, and other things, we get a bump.
Yeah.
Our biggest bump comes whenever we have an all-hands IT meeting once a quarter, and our CIO speaks to the people, and we're transparent, and we talk about how we're doing, where we're going, what the vision is.
Yeah.
Those are the meetings where we get the biggest jump.
Really?
It's not even close.
Is it by what kind of factor is it? Like,
It's like, well, if I said 12 and 19 points, you don't really have any correlation. But if you think about where we were at minus 29 to 28, and we just saw a jump like on our last ENPS, and it took us up to 29. And we just had an excellent IT all hands meeting where our CIO, we invited our CEO to come, and she came.
Oh, awesome.
And spoke to us as an IT team. I mean, that doesn't happen very often.
No, a lot of companies, they have those silos. You got this finance department, you got the CEO department. There's a lot of companies that kind of have their own groups and their own silos. They don't communicate enough.
Absolutely.
It makes it hard to get those buy-ins too and build those cultures between the teams as well.
Yeah. So whenever we just found, and we try to bake into that where we do some recognition of people on the team. Obviously, our CIO speaks. He's very eloquent. He won CIO of the year last year, I think it was, here in the DFW Metroplex. Exactly. His name's Brett Lansing, and he won one of those. So, we have a team of people that actually care, and he speaks, and he's transparent, like what we've been talking about. He's empathetic, and when he talks, he's being authentic. And I mean, that goes a long way with people. You know what I mean? When you can hear people like that. I mean, so that helps the engagement as well. So I mean, it's a big deal. If you don't have an engaged workforce, what do you have? I mean, people are your biggest asset. So if they're not engaged and they don't care, or they feel disassociated, you're not going to get your best performance from the team, and people generally aren't going to be happy. And who doesn't want to be happy at work when you're spending 40 hours a week there? So.
Oh, exactly. I mean, if you have the type of toxic culture, you also get the people where, it's a 4:50 on a Friday, I'm going to go home.
Right.
Because, I mean, they're mentally checked out 2 hours earlier anyway.
Right.
Because they don't want to be there.
Right.
So it's like, how do you build a culture? How do you build a business so that people are actually excited to come to work? They want to be there. They want to do exceptional work.
Yeah. And I think it's even sometimes just like little things. Like, let's say, for example, we have an install, and we're going to do it that evening or something like that. Yeah. And you just tell the team, you know what, take off 2 hours early. Yeah. Because you're coming back 2 hours later. I don't want you to work overtime if you don't have to. A little gesture like that, or hey, it's 3 o'clock on Friday. Log off. Go home. You know what I mean? Because I know I'm going to get that time back.
Of course.
I mean, so it's not a little thing. But when you do little things like that, people actually care. Or what if you actually sent a thank you note like every other month, and you took the time to write something out about each individual person on your team and say, but something specific though, not just thank you for your hard work, but something specific, so they know that what they're doing, and you just tell them thank you, and it comes out of nowhere. It doesn't come with a raise. It doesn't come with anything. It's just in the middle of the year. Wow, out of nothing, I got a thank you note from someone. Yeah, and I would also throw in there that with the offshore team that we have, we don't treat our offshore vendor that works with us as a vendor. They're part of my team. You wouldn't differ. I don't treat them any differently. I meet with them monthly as a team. I have one-on-ones. I have with them once a month. I have a one-on-one with every single one of my offshore contractors because we don't treat them as contractors. We treat them. So if you want a team that's high-performing, treat them like they're part of your team. I think a lot of times when you have that vendor relationship, the vendors get treated like vendors. It's transactional. Yeah, it's transactional, and I think they think that a vendor shows up and they have a magic wand and is going to make everything. If you have a vendor relationship that's not working, it's your fault. It's not their fault. Yeah, it's absolutely your fault. 100%. Like, did you train them? Was there any documentation? Was there a handover? Was there anything? Do you have any relationships with these people? Because if you want to get the best from your vendor, you should treat them like they're part of your company. And so I'm a big proponent. I even have our vendors rate us.
Oh, really?
I have them give us an NPS score. How are we doing? Are we doing good?
Really?
So once a quarter, I ask them, how are we doing? And then they rate me, and then I share it with them. And I say, here's how you rated me.
Yeah.
Here's how you rated my team. Here's how you rated me. Here's how you rated us. Where can we improve, et cetera? So we make ourselves accountable to them instead of vice versa.
That's very rare and unique.
And I think it gets a lot of, I mean, they feel, I think they've even told me, the vendor that we work with has told me, they work for us, but they really consider themselves employees. I sent them some stuff from our company, some Accent Care swag. I had a whole bunch of stuff, boxed it up, shipped it over there. You would have thought we did the biggest thing in the. They were ecstatic that we did that, and it made them feel like they're part of the team. It's a small gesture,
Absolutely.
but when you do things like that, it just shows that you care, and people want to know that you care.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes the smallest gestures mean the biggest. Means more in the world for some people.
Absolutely.
And there is everyone's got that cliche BS card from a boss where you knew it wasn't authentic because it just was a little line, thank you for doing great work. And maybe you had an Amazon gift card or something like that inside.
Right.
Where it's like, do they really mean it? Or did the secretary or their assistant just write that card, copy paste 500 times or something like that? It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I think you talk to them about their future.
Yep.
Like a 3-year plan. Like, where do you want to be? Like, if I have someone on my team that wants to be in another group, then it's my job to get them into that other group.
Yeah.
I have promoted people out of my team onto other teams. That's what I should do. And sometimes managers don't want to do that. They want to hold other people there to make their job easier.
Exactly.
My job is to move you on if I can, whether it's within my group or outside the group. And my boss, my CIO, Brett, he even calls it resume equity. Am I trying to build up their resumes with the trainings I'm giving them and make them more valuable to my company and or to make them more valuable in the market? Either way, I mean, when you do that for people, they know that you actually care. I mean, that's important. And that's how you get the best out of people. And when you get, thank you notes from people for just doing small gestures, you know what I mean? You can tell that that's uncommon. If someone's taking the time that you just send them a small note, you can tell it's not that common and it doesn't happen that often. So I just think that's hugely important. People talk about, AI or do we do this and do this and this? Yes, there's all kinds of great technologies, but if you don't have people engaged, those technologies
don't matter.
They don't matter, and they probably won't get implemented right or or, it all starts with people. It starts and ends with people, always. That's always the solution, I think. And I think wherever that doesn't work, that's a leadership and a management problem. It's not a people problem. It always falls on management and leadership, in my opinion.
I agree. And you look at the productivity of some of the people or some of the companies where you just have a toxic culture and no one wants to work there. They never perform as good as the other companies where they actually treat them with a modicum of respect and go above and beyond and really try to coach and develop them. I mean, I won't say any names, but I've been a part of some IT companies where you just wanted to leave every minute of the day. They didn't want to progress your career. They wouldn't give you the tools to progress. If anything, you had to do it on your own.
I totally agree. What I could tell you about the teams that I work with is, the goal in Agile is to get teams to be self-managing. And that's happened so much so that with certain teams, that it's just hands off. Let them run. They've become maniacal about their own metrics, et cetera, that they're tracking. And I mean, they own those metrics now. It's not me showing up and saying, here's what you got, here's what you got. It's like, hey, we need to do this, guys. We need to fix this. They have their retros and they're like, we need to get better. Our number dropped. I mean, they own it. They're passionate about that. And I think that's what's great is that if you show people and you invest in them like that, I think most people want to do a good job. Most people want to kill it. And they want to exceed expectations. I think sometimes management just has to get out of the way. That's the problem. So as management feels like they oftentimes that they have to know or they have to do this to put their finger on something or something like that. And I think the best managers actually trust their team. And you talked about what would you do to build that culture. That's the other thing. I usually show up and just tell people, hey, I have to earn your trust. You don't have to earn mine. I trust you unless I have reason not to. I need to earn your trust though. But you don't have to earn mine. You're here. I'm new here, whatever, or I've brought you on, therefore I already trust you because I've talked to you. I'll earn your trust, but you've got mine right out of the gate. Instead of you need to earn my trust. That's the old thinking.
That's the old equation that used to be the default for most companies and most methodologies. And mindsets.
I think if you just trust people out of the gate, they're professionals. You got them here. You hired them. They're already here. I mean, what are they, incompetent? I mean, is everyone wrong that hired them? So just trust them until they give you a reason not to. And then if that reason happens not to, then you have to have an honest, open relationship where you can actually talk to them and just say, hey, I'm noticing you're maybe not quite meeting the bar you've set for yourself. And I just wanted to talk about it. Is there something we need to talk about? Are you doing okay? Seriously. And they'll know if you're being sincere. And if they believe that, then I just think that's pretty much key to everything. I mean, everything. So
then what are your thoughts on kind of the going on the vein of transparency, but also you want to make people feel comfortable? A lot of companies, it's usually the feedback is mostly anonymous. Do you agree in both methodologies where you have a venue or a mechanism for anonymous feedback, and then you have another mechanism for just feedback where you can have your name attached to it?
Yeah, when we send out a survey, we sent one out in January. We made it anonymous, and it's truly anonymous. I know people are always skeptical. And it's like I use a third-party app where I can't see. I have no idea who it is that submits the feedback. I like that because I want them to be honest. I want unfiltered feedback. I think if you're afraid of feedback, then you shouldn't even ask for feedback to begin with. If you're afraid of what people are going to say, so I don't want to filter anybody. But I think I have the kind of relationship, like with my team, like if I was having a one-on-one, that, I tell people, when we're meeting one-on-one, you say whatever you want. Yeah. You don't have to filter it. If you want to use 4-letter words, go for it. If you're angry, tell me you're angry, be angry, whatever. We'll deal with it. But they have to feel like they've got a space where they can actually talk to you, where they can vent frustrations, where they don't feel like they're going to get judged based on those frustrations, like that they might share. Like that's not going to be a part of your review. If we're talking one-on-one, it's one-on-one time. And you can give me honest feedback. If there's something I need to do better, if there's something I'm not doing, if there's something you want us to do that we're not doing, tell us. I mean, I think we have that at our company. And I'm not just talking about my team. I think we have that. I think people feel like they can speak their minds. I mean, that's kind of one of the tenets of what we're trying to do. If you want to try to change a culture or transform a culture and just change it, you can't be afraid of feedback. You can't be afraid of honest, open, blunt. I would much rather deal with someone who's open, honest, blunt instead of someone who's passive aggressive and hints at things.
Agree.
And just comes right out and says, hey, you're missing the mark. I really want you to do this, or what you said over here, you were way wrong. Whatever. I mean, that's because you know what you're dealing with. And it just makes it easier to fix it, really. It's you always talk about time to money and time to production and failing fast. I mean, just get the straight feedback straight. Now let's move. We don't have time to get our feelings hurt about that stuff. Let's fix it for them and make people, make them feel like they're being heard, and then let's action on it as soon as we can. And I think, when you do those employee surveys and stuff and you send those out, that's great. But oftentimes there's never any feedback about, well, what did you do based on that? But if you make yourself accountable to people and say, you gave us this feedback, here's what we've done to address that feedback, and then you keep following up on it until you've gotten some kind of resolution, that's how you can change a culture.
That's incredibly rare, too. I mean, the overwhelming majority, I would argue a majority of companies don't have that type of transparency and that follow through and that follow up. And that really is that's even more important, you could argue, because identifying the problem is half the issue. But okay, great, you have a problem. Well, what happens next? Do they just... I won't name it again, but there's certain companies where the same problem is there quarter after quarter, and management just said, oh, yeah, we're working on it. But they never showed us the next steps, and truth be told, they were never really working on it. But I'm sure that, just having that transparency is so much important as well. Yeah,
you know how in Agile there's that ceremony called a retrospective. After we deliver, we get together and we talk about what went well, what did not go well, what should we stop doing, what should we start doing. You have those retros. I've even worked at some places, in the past where you have a retro and you talk about these things, and then that's it. You go away, and then you go to your next, and then some of those retro things happen again that you talked about in the previous retro. The key here is when you have a retro like that, or when you're trying to adjust, you capture the things that you talked about and you assign them to someone. Someone takes ownership of each of the retro items that we need to work on for the next retro, and then you make sure you follow up on them before you have the next retro, and we do that, and then we start off the next meeting with, where are we on these items? We should be able to close each one of them and make sure that we've closed the gap. So, it's a measurable, it's how are we doing on that? If you don't do that, then you're never going to change anything. And that's the whole thing. Again, we're back to transparency. We're back to being accountable. And, I just think that if people in leadership make themselves accountable to the people that they work with, that's how you change a company.
Agree.
But
it's all about. And then out of curiosity, kind of an ADHD thought or kind of like a management style. I mean, back in the day, Steve Jobs and Apple, they were known for having a very competitive, more of a negative environment. And physically speaking, it's one of the most successful companies in history under Steve Jobs, and they did phenomenally. Do you think they would be even more effective back then if they were to have more of a positive culture and positive reinforcement style? Because I know there are different styles for different people, different personalities, but on average, I think the positive methodology is most effective.
I would think it would be too. I think in a situation like that, they're probably still successful because they're getting paid well enough that people can overlook that for a time, right? But then after a time, that's probably going to wear on most people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Regardless of the salary, you're going to feel like, okay, that's good for a season or two. But if you really want to build, and I don't want to confuse, you're not building a family. The people you work with aren't your family. Your family is your family. These are working relationships. So, you know, people say, oh, we're like a family. It's probably not like a family, but it's like a really good team, just like an NBA team. They're a team. They don't live together. They're not related to one another, but they perform well as a team. And that's what I think you're looking for. I think if you start talking about work as a family and stuff like that, you're missing the mark. But I mean, if it were me, I mean, I couldn't run a company the way Steve Jobs runs a company, obviously. But then again, he's a billionaire and I'm not. So he knows something I don't know. But I wouldn't run a company like that, because I would only ever run a company or a group the way I would want to be managed, not how I wouldn't adopt anybody else's philosophy. And I probably wouldn't work well in a company like that. Like even if I thought it was a great job or whatever, if that was the culture of that company, then I'm not the right guy to work there, obviously. So
I tend to be the same philosophy as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, we've all had those negative working environments where they might they'll hit the goal for the fiscal quarter, they'll hit the numbers maybe, but I mean, the number one thing every employee is thinking, or many of the employees are thinking, are where am I going to go next?
Right. Yeah, there's always a company. I mean, I've worked for companies with negative culture. I've worked for a company where I've seen the CEO rip people apart on a retreat.
What?
You know what I mean? Like rip people up on a retreat. That's what the retreat is for. And it's like,
No, so the retreat. The purpose of the retreat was just to dress people down.
No, I don't think that was the intent, but that's what happened. And it's like, so it's like that. What's going to be gained by that? That's not going to motivate anybody to do anything. So, right.
Talk about a terrible retreat. Jeez.
Yeah, it was not a good retreat. That was the eye-opening where I was like, okay, this isn't where I fit in. So, right.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I guess some people think that people respond positively to that. I don't know how or why, but I can't imagine. I mean, unless, maybe if you're in the military. But I don't think it works in any other venue.
There's a couple personality types where I think it could be complementary towards them, but I think an overwhelming majority respond more positively to that positive culture, that kind of positive atmosphere that they're building.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just like, do they feel like you're there to help? So if I have someone that I feel like is not where they should be, then I just talk to them honestly. And I'm not there to beat them up or anything like that, but I'll mainly just ask them, is something going on? What's going on with you? I know you pretty well. I should know my team well enough that I could tell if something's up, right? And just ask them what's going on. And then oftentimes they'll tell me at a high level. And I always tell them, you don't have to tell me specifics, but is there something going on? If so, what can I do to help you? Do you need some time? What can I do to make it better if I can? If I can't, do you need space? Do you need time? Do you need an extension? Whatever it might be. And, you're going to gain trust from your employees that way, that you really are putting your money where your mouth is. Like, you actually care about their well-being, which I do. And I think any manager worth their salt would actually care about what's up with their team if someone's not doing well. Because a performance issue isn't always indicative of somebody that's checked out. I mean, people have real lives. There are real world problems out there that people have to deal with. And you never know what's going on at home for someone or outside the office. And we're not robots. But like you've alluded to, I think some companies sometimes think people are robots and they're just here to perform, and you have to separate the work from outside. But sometimes some of those events that are happening outside of work are so big that that's not a realistic ask. If you lose a parent, that's a life-changing event. You have a new child, that's a life-changing event. You have a divorce, it's a life-changing event. So, you can't expect people just to show up and somehow divorce that, and have two personalities. That's not realistic.
Oh, there's definitely, and we all know those companies where you're treated as a line item by your employee ID number. Of
course.
They don't know your name, they know the employee ID number.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, life's too short to work at those types of companies.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
Then out of curiosity, what's your methodology or what are your thoughts on it? Because again, let's say you have someone on the team who maybe their personality responds to that negative culture. Maybe they wouldn't, and maybe they're negative in general and starting to affect the other team. What have you seen in your career as one of the most effective ways to handle that situation? And maybe it's transitioning them to a different company or or maybe coaching them. Some people just need a little bit of tweaking, so to say.
I think that what you said, I think people are quick to want to write people up and create a list because they just don't want to deal with it. I think that's the lazy solution, to be honest with you. Having said that, I have fired someone numerous times, but the right thing to do, and I've had this happen on several occasions where you might have somebody that is deemed difficult by other people to work with or whatever, and it's just like, get to know that person and what is it that might be, I'm not the psychology guru I might have an undergraduate degree in psychology, but that doesn't mean I know everything about psychology, but what is the real root cause? And ask yourself that. And I have found that 9 times out of 10, it is communication. And there is this, I can't remember who it is off the top of my head, but basically communication is only based 7% on the words you say.
I've seen similar.
Most of it is the tone in your voice. And then the rest of it is nonverbal communication.
Body language,
So what happens when you have a remote team that doesn't have their cameras on? Now 93% of your communication is tone. And 7% is words.
And they might have 5 monitors on Tetris and news and other stuff. And
that's a big thing. So you turn your camera on, all of a sudden now you're communicating. You've got additional ways to communicate via nonverbal. When you don't have your camera on, you're talking 93% communication is just your tone. Like, how do you sound? Do you sound passionate? Do you sound angry? Do you sound perturbed? Do you sound frustrated? Do you sound excited? So whenever I encounter someone like that, oftentimes, and I tell my team this all the time, they're probably tired of hearing it, but I'm like, communication is how you are perceived. Oftentimes, it basically is the perception of how competent you are in your job. It's how you write an email. It's how you talk. It's how you interact with other people. People oftentimes base their entire perception of you based on how you communicate. He's a competent person, but what they're saying is that they probably like the way he communicates. He's friendly. He's actionable. He gets things done, whatever. The people that are poor communicators, they're going to get perceived oftentimes as maybe not being as competent in their job, which isn't really realistic. They might still be. Not everyone's a great communicator. And you can't fault those are. And some people are introverts. That's fine. But whenever I've had a person that I didn't feel like was maybe had a false perception or whatever, it's usually because of how they communicate. And when you fix that problem, then suddenly everybody realizes, first of all, people notice when those people fix their communication problem. And I've had that a couple times in my career where I've worked with some brilliant people that just needed a nudge, right? I mean, just like maybe I need to learn something over here that could make me better. They were just like something they maybe weren't even cognizant of. But to their credit, they took the feedback and they actioned on it and they changed. So it's not my credit. It's that because they had the choice to either listen to what I was saying or ignore it completely. And then they chose to actually make an investment in themselves, which is what I tell them. You're making an investment in yourself by doing this.
Absolutely.
And, maybe I had built up enough equity with them or made enough deposits, right, to where I was asking them something so they actually believed that I cared because they'd seen me showing up and put money in the bank a few times. So then they believed what I was saying, and to their credit, they actioned on it and they changed their entire perception. And you can change that via your communication. And,
absolutely.
And I tell people that it doesn't matter if you work at McDonald's, if you work at Pep Boys, if you work at, Walmart, or you work at an IT company. I mean, communication is your calling card. That's how people are going to remember you, and it's how they're going to associate you and basically oftentimes judge you and your competency. So it's huge. It's huge. It's never talked about. It's usually not ever talked about in the workplace, or anything, or given any kind of, training of any kind. I don't see companies teaching people how to communicate.
They really don't focus on it.
Right. And yet that's everything. If your communication and your communication style and how you approach things, I mean, it's really everything. If you can find someone who can do that well, I mean, that to me, like I always tell people when I'm looking for someone, I need these technical skill sets, but what I really need, you can teach communication. You can, but you can teach skill sets of technical value much easier than you can communication stuff. So find that person who's a communicator. Find that person who's passionate.
Yep.
Teach them what they don't know over here, because this is much harder to teach than this is.
And it's amazing. It's one of the most important things I look for in people is people who are willing to give critical feedback, because that's when you learn the most.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing. Sometimes people just don't know. Like when I first started my company, I had an issue where it wasn't an issue. I needed one of the guys to do something. So I just wrote down a post-it note and put it on the table, and I didn't think about it. And then he came to me like stopping. I mean, I know you probably didn't mean this, but it's kind of passive aggressive. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I mean, you're insinuating maybe I can't do it on my own. And I'm like, I had no idea, and it wasn't intentional. And thank God we had that relationship where he gave me the critical feedback. But I just literally thought, hey, here's something. I forget to do this sometimes, and we forgot one time, so I'm going to give you a note just to remind you. And I had no idea with his communication style how he took it and how other could take that same perception from my action.
Mm-hmm.
So just as little things that made me look like an a-hole, because it made me look like I was being passive aggressive.
Right.
When my intention was just because I myself had forgot about this task, and we did as a team. So I thought, hey, let's write it down. But if I didn't have the honesty with the team, I would never know that there's an issue. And that's not something you learn in college or middle school or anything. It's just gaining you need a big sample size of human interactions.
Right. I think that communication too, I think it's super important in getting to know your team, because when you know your team, everybody has different communication styles, to your point. Everybody has different motivations.
True.
So I have some people on my team that want to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like that's the number one motivation. That's fine. None of us work for free, right?
True.
I also have people on my team that they want to learn. They just want to learn. The money isn't as important to them as them learning and increasing their knowledge in a specific field or whatever. I also have people on my team that want to climb the corporate ladder.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not so much about money, but they want to increase in responsibility,
and the title and the prestige.
Right. And I've got people that want that too. So I have a bunch of different people. So if you understand your team and understand what motivates them, that gives you some insight on how you should probably deal with them, and also how you would communicate with them.
Which kind of brings up another thought I had. What are your thoughts about across the board corporate incentives? Do they really work? Because kind of talking on that note, how everyone has their different desires, their aspirations. Because I remember in some old companies I used to work at, they'd say, hey, if you earn X amount of employee points or something, you could get an iPad or a grill. That might work for some people, but I wonder, are those programs really that effective when you're trying to do a blanket approach, which, in terms of business and efficiencies like money and ROI and tracking and metrics, I understand why they're doing that, but I wonder how effective are they really for the whole company?
Yeah, that's a good question. We don't have that. I know there are companies out there that I've looked into, like, I won't mention the names, but there are companies out there that do that. And I think it's a cool idea.
Yeah.
But I don't think anything replaces a relationship with an employee where they feel understood, they feel like they're heard, they feel like you've got their back. That's another
Even
thing.
more important, yes.
Do you have their back? Like, will you stand up for your team if something gets out of control? Because employees want to know that their manager will actually stand up for them if need be.
Yep.
And they won't just roll over, but they'll fight the good fight if needed. You can't fight every fight.
True.
But when it comes time to fight, are you willing to fight for them? And I think that goes much further than someone earning points so they can get free silverware or something like that. I think that's fun, though. I think that's cool. We have a thing at our company that my CIO implemented. It's called Happiness Hour. We do it once every month on Friday. We did it this morning, and we get on there for an hour and we talk about what makes us happy. That's it. For an hour. We get on there and it can be something personal. It can be something work related. We just don't talk about religion or politics.
Right.
And people get on the phone and they can sit there and talk about what makes them happy. And there was a study that was done that when you do stuff like that, it can actually affect people up to 5 relationships away from you because it stays with you when it leaves. You know how the 6 degrees of southern bacon,
exactly.
right? This is kind of that same concept. But when we just get on there and again, it's once a month, our CIO shows up.
Yeah.
Like our CIO shows up.
That's rare.
He promotes
awesome.
that. Well, we have a great CIO.
Yeah.
So
I might be biased and think he's awesome because I think he's a Hawkeye too. So.
yeah, he is. He is a Hawkeye. You got that. So yeah, we do that. I mean, I think people prefer that and having, when you want to build a culture, you're not just building it, top down. You want employees to get engaged with one another because those relationships oftentimes are even stronger than the ones that they have with management.
True.
So, you hear people leave bad managers, and that saying's been used 1,000 times. We
It's
could open
true.
LinkedIn right now and we could see that. And it's true.
Oh, yeah.
But I think they have a harder time leaving when they've got good connections. And it doesn't mean they have to be friends outside of work. But when you have people that you really like working with, you want to build those relationships too, not just the management down to employee relationships, but the employee to employee management relationships are huge. And so I think that kind of stuff works better, having a happiness hour. We have another thing called small wins where we nominate one another. And basically, once a month we get together and anyone can nominate anyone for anything else. And we get on a call for an hour and I say, I just want to thank Nick. Nick did this for me this past month and it really helped me get through this and just wanted to thank him. And we call him out and everybody's on there. And
that's awesome.
It's just like a big thank you session of things that were meaningful to other people. When you do stuff like that, I just think people are just so much more engaged. And when you get to know the people on your team, employee spotlights, all that kind of stuff, anything you can do to get to know people, I think is worth investing in. I don't think that's wasted time at all.
No.
Yeah, I think teams perform better when they know each other. You can have a bunch of superstars, but if they don't know each other and they don't know their roles and they don't play them well, every team that wins the NBA championship doesn't have the 5 best players necessarily. Remember that year the Mavs won with Dirk Nowitzki and a bunch of nobodies? I mean, not nobodies, but comparatively. You know what I mean? The Oklahoma, the Thunder never won when they had Kevin Westbrook, Durant, and they had, Westbrook, and they had all these super Harden. They had all these stars. They didn't win a championship. They probably had the most talent, but they didn't win. So it's the people that, work well together, know their roles. Those are the teams that perform. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You're not going to have, even if you had all the highest paid players at every position, that doesn't ensure great delivery, doesn't ensure a great team. But teams that like each other and work well with one another and, really respect one another, you're going to get more performance out of those teams.
Agree.
In my opinion.
And going back to kind of TV activities, kind of vectoring off and going down the path, what do you like to do outside the office?
What do I like to do outside the office? Well, I live out in the country, so I love spending time out in the country, walking, rucking, with backpacking weights and doing that, getting workouts, riding my bike out there, working out. I love to work out.
What kind of bike are you using?
Believe it or not, you're going to laugh. This is hilarious. I still have a 1980s BMX bike, 1990s. It's newer school. BMX bikes. I grew up BMX. That's all
awesome.
I ever did, and I still ride one. I probably look ridiculous, and I do not care. I love it. I love riding it. I just got it worked on the other day, as a matter of fact. It's a Dyno Air. That's what I have, made by GT.
That sounds pretty cool.
So that's what I ride. I don't ride. I had a mountain bike, and I was like, I just don't like mountain bikes. It's just, and I'm not wearing those funky outfits on these big 21, the 21 speed bikes and stuff like that. It's just not me. So I like to ride those. So basically, any sport I can ever play, I like to play. I'm a sports fanatic, so anything sports I'm into. So it could be anything. Love soccer.
Nice.
Love college football, high school football.
Oh yeah.
Lived in Allen for 27 years, so I'm a huge high school football fan. Thanks to Allen. So yeah.
There you go. What's your college ball team you like to go for?
Well, I got my master's from Alabama, so Roll Tide.
There you go.
And then my second team has to be Texas, just because I grew up in Texas. So
Makes sense.
You have to either like the Aggies or the Longhorns, so it's the Longhorns. So
there you go.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, Brett. Really appreciate it, man.
Hey, I appreciate it. It's great talking about this stuff. Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
I'll do it again.
Absolutely.
Thank you again, everyone, for taking the time to tune in. Don't forget to take the time to like, subscribe, and comment. Also, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and have a great day. Topping Talks.